Welcome everybody. How's it going? This is Pyrotechnics and it's StarCasts. Once again, we are doing all sorts of fun action straight from rcastit, reddit.com/r/castit that is. And tonight, today, whatever time you are watching this, it could even be in the morning. I'm your host, I'm your caster, I am Pyrotechnics. And my mic was down there. But now it's up here. So I'm going to be casting a game by one of the regular casters who's done a submission. This is eXeBreaker's match, and he is a ZvP. It is on, what's that map that's all Protossy and looks like Star Station? It is Derelict Watcher. So we'll get the game started, and here it goes. Very, very quick. No nonsense today. This is such a cool little portrait, and I don't know what it is. I think it's a Diablo thing. But whatever. Here we are on Derelict Watcher. It is a ZvP. Spawning in the top right-hand corner, we have our Zerg player. It is in the red, eXeBreaker. And spawning in the bottom left-hand corner on Derelict Watcher, it is RevengE, the blue Protoss. GLHF action going down early over, not early Overlord scouting. What am I talking about? That's what you want to do right away. Sending your Overlord right into the opponent's base. Drone scouting is less popular against your typical Protoss player these days, just because most Protosses will in fact do a Forge Fast Expand or do something within their own base and can't really have a lot of early aggression short of cheese, which is still viable, still very, very possible, but doesn't occur as often, especially in these higher leagues. So we'll be seeing a drone scout cross a probe scout and just wave to each other as they go by, as Breaker is continuing to drone up and more probes are being chrono boosted out for RevengE. So RevengE looking like he's probably going to be doing this Forge Fast Expand. The pylon placement's a little bit further back, but he probably will complete it up with a couple of gateways here and some photon cannons, more pylons, things of that nature. The drone and the probe are getting into each other's bases and are just taking a look at what's going on. Neither of them really getting a whole lot of information right now. The Forge Fast Expand, of course, being the most likely possibility out of RevengE, so Breaker's going to see that, but nothing being seen except the spawning pool being taken for Breaker, and the probe is going to go all hero mode trying to take it out, but a 15 pool does in fact go down at 2.5 minutes, roughly. And a couple of probes being pulled off to deal with this mildly annoying drone. Looks like not really being microdog is going to go down. There it goes. Splat. And no gas being taken for Breaker, so he's not going to have a lot of heavy speedling aggression right away. He may take it a little bit later. He does pull a couple of drones off, that is, as well to deal with this probe, just pretty much in a manner similar to the way that RevengE was doing it. But if he's fast enough, he's going to spawn himself up. Yet he's going to be building up. He's going to get it, and well, it's going to go down, and that's quite all right. So the wall is being done up right now. We're going to see a pylon in the bottom, or in the top corner, and a forge in the bottom. And RevengE is just getting ready to build and expound. So this is probably going to be canceled just as it comes up, but no, it's not. Okay, RevengE is keeping his pylon right there, and causing a little bit of annoyance. But you know what? Breaker says, hey, that's okay. I'm just going to take my third. Forget your pylon. I'm going to take a couple of lings and take out that right there. Whatever. Don't even care. So this wall's not finished up yet, but the photon cannon is going to be a bit of a scary presence if those lings do want to do some damage. But they're probably not going to really be for offensive uses. Probably just used as a scouting tool. Queen comes up as the expansion is taken. And it looks like a double expand actually is behind this. So not scouted. RevengE doesn't really know this is up. He's got no vision of this. He knows, he can't see it, but he does know that that second one was probably placed down right there. So this is kind of a gutsy move. Breaker is saying, I'm going to try and max out on 3 bases before you can really do anything. You're taking a Forge Fast Expand. I know I can't do anything about it. I know you're not going to have any units for a while, and that's okay. So right now, RevengE wants to see what he's doing, but he's not really going to scout a whole lot out, especially if these lings get speed fast, but they're not gonna, so we may actually see this expo. I don't think he knows to look for this, though. I'm really thinking he might be going there. He is going to scout it out. He's going to go straight into that base and find out, oh, there is, in fact, a hatch there. But does he know that this one's here? He might just get there in time. So he is going to see that happening. A lot of drones being produced still on this one hatchery. None of them have been pulled yet because the third hatchery, pardon me, on the natural is still not quite yet up. But RevengE now knows that there are 2 expansions and that he needs to do some serious damage right now if he doesn't want his Zerg opponent to get way ahead. But Breaker, nice and safe at the time. He is very, very heavily droned on that main base, but his expansion is starting to produce some drones as well, and soon I would imagine he'd be pulling some. He hasn't quite yet. Looks like he's just focusing on scouting and continuing to drone up at this time. So he's taking double gas. Usually this is going to be indicative of some kind of maybe Mutalisk transition. He hasn't quite gone into... Well, he hasn't quite gone into a lair, but he is continuing to drone, building a couple of spores. I'm not sure if he's seen these 2 Stargates. I don't think he has. In fact, he hasn't really seen much of anything since the game began, or since the expansion was just about done. He could sneak an Overlord in here and see those, but it looks like he's getting the right answer to it anyways, because the Stargates are going to be building either some Phoenixes or Void Rays, doing a fair bit of damage. Maybe it's just taking a precautionary measure. It is a lucky one if that's the case. And now Breaker is just starting to pull his drones. He is getting quite heavily saturated on all of his bases. The worker count for both the players is actually just about dead even, with RevengE in a slight lead, even though there are 3 bases. Continuing to drone up right now, though, is eXeBreaker with 7 drones on the way. And looks like RevengE has 3 of his gases saturated. He's starting to produce Void Rays in mass, but not entirely sure. What will Breaker respond to this? He doesn't yet notice here. He knows that there's not a lot of units being produced and that there's only 1 Stargate, so unless it's back here hidden somewhere, the rest of them, that is, not sure what he's going to do. But Void Rays are being pumped right now out of those 2 Stargates, and Breaker just continues to drone up. +1 ground actually being taken for RevengE. Not sure why that's the case, as there's pretty much no ground units, just 1 sentry. That's really all there is. And pretty heavily saturated. Almost completely on all 3 of his bases. Creep spread not super far out, but it's done pretty well with the number of queens he has. So this is a very, very macro game. There's not a lot of attacking. A couple of early engagements and harassment on both sides, attempted at the very least. RevengE did slow down that second hatch, but not really, because Breaker just said, well, I'm going to take my 3rd instead. Fully saturated on that other gas, and he's starting to build up more gases as well. So is he going to tech into mutas? He does now have a lair. No, he's going to get 2 Evo chambers, and it looks like he probably will be committing to ground forces then. But these Void Rays are on their way over into this base. This 1 spore is not going to be enough to stop it, even with the queen, even if she's able to transfuse, but she does not have nearly enough energy to do that. This might be a bit of trouble for Breaker. What's he going to do to stop this? And here come the Void Rays. Target firing down the queen just out of range of the spore. They are going to finish it off. Another one does come in just in time, but she's too going to get taken out, and the spore crawler is not even in range. Man, that is a target fired down hatchery. Unfortunately, Breaker has to pull out of there. Hopefully he'll be getting a couple more of his... Well, he's taking an infestation pit. Okay, interesting. Hopefully he'll be taking a couple more spore crawlers to be able to defend against these Void Rays, but not at this time. A couple of queens there instead to deal with that. But he does lose that 3rd base. Unfortunate though it is. More Void Rays being pumped out, as well as a couple of ground units, some stalkers, some sentries coming out of RevengE's base. Fully saturated on 2 bases, just about. In fact, very heavily saturated on his 2nd. He could be taking an expansion right now, and there's really nothing his Zerg opponent could be doing about it. Is that what he's going to do? Doesn't look like it. So, there we go. A couple more spore crawlers being taken for Breaker at this time. And it looks like we're going to see some swarm hosts. Enduring Locust being researched at this time, and over back in RevengE's base, it looks like he's teching up to Colossus. But there's an engagement over here just out of range of the spore crawlers. Oh, that's got to be so irritating to deal with. These four Void Rays just doing a lot of damage and doing a bit of pretty decent bit of economic damage too. And those queens, so slow off creep, not going to be able to get in there in time. A couple of drones not being used by Breaker right now. He is probably a little bit flustered by this, to be honest. Building a macro hatch right out in front, and the Void Rays just completely untouched, save for the couple of queens that were doing a decent bit of damage. RevengE has a decent force out now to defend his main, since there isn't, well, defend his natural, that is. Since there really isn't a whole lot out on the field for Breaker, it's not going to make too much a difference. And these Swarm Hosts, well, they're not going to be able to fire back, so they're going to have to bury. They are going to get fired down anyways, thanks to that Observer. Quite unfortunate, though, that is. Breaker's taken a lot of hits, but they're not really significant hits, and he's got a lot of queens now, too. So, he's going to be able to force these guys back. He can't really detect this one obs, but he must know it's there by now. The hatchery is going up back at the third base, and Breaker is just producing a fair number of Swarm Hosts to deal with, well, probably to deal with the Stalkers and Colossi, who are now moving out. A couple of Lings are going to scout that right away, but there is not a critical mass of Swarm Hosts on the field to deal with this right now. Just about 4 and 4 more in production. Well, I'm not really sure what Breaker's going to do here. He still has a bunch of drones unmacroed, but, you know, he's focusing on this moving out army, which isn't really moving out. It's just sitting at home and taking care of business. Third base is, in fact, being taken right now for RevengE. A lot of queens out there to protect that macro hatch, but there's also a lot of Swarm Hosts in production, plus 2 missile attacks are on the way. Pardon, yes, that is, in fact, the case. So, committing heavily to Swarm Host play. What's he going to tech up to, though? It'll be interesting to see. RevengE has quite a lot of minerals and gas in the bank as well. He is going to move out now behind taking a proxy towards the edge of the creep. That one Observer is going to show him that there's really nothing to be worried about and that he can, in fact, fire this out. But look at this. He's taking a lot of probes with him to build maybe more proxy pylons. I'm not really sure. A decent number of Swarm Hosts now on the field along with these queens are going to be able to march in and do a lot of damage to this army since they are, in fact, free. Nothing to worry about. But if he's not careful, these Swarm Hosts might be in a bit of trouble, and they do a bit of damage. Nothing to really deal with these Void Rays except, of course, the Queens, but that's a lot of Swarm Hosts, and they are able to defend very, very well against this ground tech mech army. Tech mech. Sounds like Tex-Mex. This makes me hungry. I want, like, nachos or something now. Guys, I didn't really eat a lot of dinner, so we'll cast for food? Maybe? Here come the Swarm Hosts moving out just towards the edge of the creep. They are going to, the Locusts are, yes, they're going to go the right way, and they're going to get, unburrowed and head on home. That is quite a lot of units. I don't want to deal with those. A lot of queens here. Not really larva injecting at this time, but they are needed for defense. And the Swarm Hosts are going to burrow just in time, but the Observer is right there to start taking them down. He knows, Breaker knows something's up. A lot of force fields coming in. This is a pretty big engagement, and those Locusts are not going to be able to get there in time. Not going to be able to get around the force fields very easily, but the Queens are doing a decent job of cleaning up the air units. Not sure how this is all going to shake out, though. A lot of the air units have been targeted down. There are still 4 Void Rays out on the field. Sorry, they have not at all been targeted down. The Queens are going to clean a couple of them up, though. And more Colossi and Stalkers are inbound. And the Swarm Hosts are just getting pummeled. Even underground, this one Observer has been clutch. But RevengE is still going to have to go on back home because those Locusts, they are just too free, man. How free are they? They don't cost any minerals. Or gas, for that matter. Number of units, number of workers. Looks like it's still just about evened out, but Breaker has a lot more units in his army because of that engagement was just not favorable for RevengE. It's so hard for Protoss to favorably engage against the Swarm Host composition, especially with ground. Well, it's the only thing that really helps with the Swarm Host is against ground, but RevengE has totally neglected his third base, so even though he got it up forever and a day ago, he was not really utilizing it at all until just now, and he has a lot of probes on his mineral line at his main that just really don't need to be there. So Swarm Hosts are going to get a little bit out of position. They're going to get going on back home. Are they going to get back to creep just in time? The Queens are spreading it, but they are getting just in position as well. That is not the greatest composition to really be dealing with Swarm Hosts. Colossi just don't do that well against them, and there are a lot of them, so the line is going to be held. 3 bases, still not very well saturated on that third for RevengE. He's just got way too many here. He's maxed out. He's not really focusing on what's going on back home. He's maxed out on this base as well. He really needs to be taking an expansion and just teching up, building a lot more units. Plus 3 attacks coming in now, and a Nidus Worm. Breaker is going, a Nidus Network, sorry. Breaker is going to be doing something very silly in the main base very soon. A little bit micromanagement, try saying that very fast, 5 times in fact, of Breaker's and, frankly, RevengE's units at home, that is his worker units, but it's working out reasonably well for both the players. RevengE has a lot higher of a supply, but that is mostly due to the fact that he has a 5 Colossus composition, and along with quite a lot of chargelets. No, is that charge? Does charge even up? No, he does not have charge. He's only running on basic zealots. That may not be good at all. Breaker is moving out with his swarm host. They are off creep, but the locusts are quite large in number, and they're going to go straight for that third and engage on this army. Not what you want to have happening as a Protoss player, just having all these locusts coming in here and doing a lot of damage to your home units. Oh my goodness, a lot of zealots. They are doing a decent amount of damage, and the queens are very, very slow off creep along with the swarm host. This retreat is going to be very, very slow, but they're going to bury just in time to launch a couple of... Oh my goodness, the swarm hosts are getting fired down very, very quickly. The locusts are coming out, though. Not sure who's going to fare better in this engagement. There are a lot of swarm hosts being taken down. Vipers are now in production. And more Colossi to back this up. The swarm hosts just get absolutely decimated while the front lines take out the locusts. But more swarm hosts still being produced. As long as they're in good position, they do well. RevengE has taken a lead, but how long will that last? His supply is about 20 ahead of his opponent, but these locusts just engaging for free. There is no way that's not an economically favorable trade. So moving on to creep now and target firing down a couple of those tumors is RevengE's army of mostly stalkers, zealots, and colossi. Meanwhile, a couple of Vipers in production to make sure that those colossi don't add too much of a threat following up. So there goes one, getting pulled, targeted fire down by the queens. And yeah, well, RevengE is going to have to go on back home. And if you look at the amount, if you look at the income right now, it's still reasonably even. The Protoss is still favored because he's mining now off these 3 bases, but he's mined out on that one. And I'm not sure if this will turn very quickly. This one's mined out as well, but I wouldn't be very surprised if Breaker just takes this on sheer numbers by just macroing up crazy. He did take a little ninja expand down there, and I completely missed it in all of the action that was swarm hosts and colossi. 1 swarm host, 2 swarm hosts getting fired down, but here comes the locust. They were in fact bait, and they're going to have to run home. Colossi, as powerful, as crazy as they are, just do not fare well against this. The locusts just too free, man. They are too free. They are too good and too free. And the swarm hosts are very well positioned to be able to take out anything at all that happens here. And the colossi now being pulled by the stalkers. And will you look at that? Here comes the Nidus Worm. Couple of slowlings even just pouring in. So not a very committed assault. Meanwhile, this little attrition battle rages on at home. But Breaker is taking not too many hits, and he's dishing out quite a lot more. RevengE is in a lot of trouble right now that Nidus Network has finally finished. All of the backbone of the production is being taken out with absolutely no response. The units are just, yeah, there's almost nothing. There's 3 or 4 colossi. A few things are being warped on back in. And the army supply, meanwhile, is just falling very quickly for RevengE. Even though his worker supply is quite high. Doesn't matter too much. And, yeah, with not a whole lot to deal with this Nidus Worm, it doesn't matter. And here comes another one at the only mining base back left. Breaker is having just a field day with these Niduses, and he has kept his base very well safe with all of these swarm hosts. So here it comes, being fired down by probes now. Another one coming on up. It's going to get scouted, but it's not going to matter. A lot of the damage has already been dealt, and forcing these probes to just pull off of mine, well, I think that has bought Breaker just enough time to be able to do quite a lot of damage. And now this one base is being reinforced by quite a lot of drones, building up spines everywhere, all ground army. The Void Rays have just been completely given up. And here comes another Nidus Worm, just for the fun of it. So, now marching down the field are Queens and Swarm Hosts, who do not see this Observer, but this Observer does see them. Not really going to matter too much, because that is a lot of Swarm Hosts. And a lot of Vipers, and a lot of Queens. Slow off creep, but doesn't matter too much. This army is really all RevengE has got. Back to the army supply tab. It's still like really, really, really low. And by forcing the workers to just kind of go everywhere, well, I guess they're not really going to go everywhere. Breaker has just kind of set himself up to be in a really good position to strike right over here, being able to send all of his units into the main. If he actually sent in some swarm hosts right now and committed to that, that would, oh, he did send in a couple of swarm hosts. He is going to bury them, but, you know, not going to do too much damage. He's now going to move. No, they are going to do some damage because they're not even being fired down. The Nidus Worm is still even out there, and they're just going to continue to harass. And here comes another Nidus Worm on the edge of this base. So, meanwhile, the Niduses are big-time distractions, and Breaker is going to march right down the field with his swarm hosts, with his vipers, with his queens, very slowly with his queens, but nonetheless he's getting there. And he's going to plant his swarm host right in the way of RevengE's army. So, just in time, here come the locusts. This is a big engagement, and they're going to get fired down. The colossi are being taken out. They are being pulled very, very well by the couple of these vipers, and even though they're seen, I don't know how this is going to shake out. The queens are not target firing very well on the void rays, but there's only a couple of them, so it's really not going to matter too much. The swarm hosts are going to back it up and go on home, but not before trading very, very, very well, very, very, very well with the Protoss. And they're going to bury right there. Well, if they're in time, that is. Maybe not. Maybe not. Oh, God. They need to run away, otherwise they're going to get decimated completely. And, God, if you ever wanted to know what a burning swarm host looks like. So, meanwhile, this base is getting completely taken out. A couple more Niduses are coming in. Only one mining base left for RevengE. His macro is falling apart. All he has left are these, what, like six colossi, couple of void rays. And even though Breaker is not really down, is kind of down to a few things, look at that. He just has so many minerals. He has so much being produced for him that he's able to just remax instantly on his swarm hosts. And if he gets there in time, well, you know, even if he loses a base or two, not going to matter too heavily. Really not going to matter too heavily. And yeah, a couple more queens being pulled on in, as along with the vipers getting ready for when the swarm hosts do come out. They are almost done. Overlord Carry is being researched as well, so we might even see drop play before the end of this all. A couple of swarm hosts being fired down, but a lot more still coming out here. Not much more in production, but there's going to be enough to do quite a lot of damage here. And to be honest, a little bit of an air tech switch probably would have worked out really, really well in Breaker's favor, but nevertheless, he's doing quite well with the swarm hosts. He hasn't really had to transition into anything else. He is being able to very effectively pull those colossi with his vipers. The only big problem he has now are these couple of void rays, and the queens are doing a decent bit of damage to them before being fired down. So, I mean, no matter how well this, you know, the remnants of this composition does for RevengE, he's still pretty much lost, because he has one colossi and 3 void rays left, and he's got one mining base that is, like, way maxed out, way beyond maxed out, and all Breaker has to do is kill it and kill pretty much any hope RevengE has. He has not expanded. His income has just absolutely stayed where it was. Okay, never mind. For some reason, I guess because Breaker isn't really mining out of this base, he does need to get more drones up. But, yeah, okay. I guess 59 workers will give you 840 minerals per minute. But that's alright. He's still remaxing once again on swarm hosts, and he'll probably be okay. Actually, RevengE is able to build up back a decent force, so this game is still really anyone's. It's kind of going actually very back and forth now. I'm kind of surprised at how this is shaken out, but both players have sort of neglected to mine out of a lot of their bases for some time, and to, you know, move drones and probes. So this base, while hidden, was, I believe, detected by that observer. Another base really could be taken, maybe over here, up here, for the Zerg player, but he's still reasonably safe because this army is not that threatening. Plates, super threatening. And he's got a decent number of swarm house out to defend against that. So this base pretty well, pardon me, mined up, and yeah. We're going to see High Templar going straight in Argons, so this unit composition is still not really going to do a ton for RevengE against Swarm Host. Continued Swarm Host aggression. A lot more Spore Crawlers going in, walking their way into this base so that the Void Rays don't take it out. So heavily defending his interest right now is eXeBreaker, and a couple of links coming in to scout what the actual Archon and Colossi, and a couple of Void Rays. So very, very expensive army this is. Not huge, but expensive. So defending the last base, Breaker will just be sitting there and minding his own business. But meanwhile, RevengE's army is marching in to the north, and it is going to head straight into absolutely nothing. So both players just trying to kind of feel out what their opponents are doing towards the end of this. They know they probably both really don't have a whole lot of income, a whole lot of remaxing potential. Now RevengE has taken the second base, or this fourth base down here, and it's being seen by Breaker, but there's not a whole lot he can do except burrow a couple of swarm hosts and just aggressively pick at it. That might bring RevengE all the way back, though. He was about ready to go and attack and probably just go in for the kill. He doesn't have a huge army, but it's more than sufficient to deal with what Breaker has right now with these 6 or 7 or 8 swarm hosts. But I don't know. Breaker mining up. He has a lot of drones that are really not doing a whole lot of anything now that he's mined out on his extractors. He needs to be expanding if he wants to continue to take this. But here comes RevengE with his reasonably sized army to try and head straight for this heavily defended base. The Vipers, oh my goodness, if these swarm hosts pull back just in time, are they going to? I'm not sure. Here they come onto the last mining base. The Archons are first in, and the swarm hosts are going to bury just in time. They are getting seen, though, and there's no observer, though, so those those Colossi are not going to be able to do a whole lot against the swarm hosts until the observer comes on in. This base is very heavily defended, though, and, well, this might not be the best time to be all-inning, but RevengE is going for it anyways. He is going straight for the kill, targeting down that one queen and all of those spore crawlers that are the biggest threat, really, to the Void Rays. And not a whole lot else is going on. Breaker has only 5 swarm hosts left. So, even so, RevengE has quite a lot of Colossi left. And, yeah, this is a very, very interesting strategy that has just been committed so heavily to that Breaker has... Well, Breaker really doesn't have a whole lot of anything now. He's probably going to lose this. So, I guess the lesson here, if this really is GG, is to just take your expansions and macro. Because even when you kill your opponent pretty much outright, well, you may still lose if you are not macroing yourself and are not able to max back up. And here comes a conga line of probes. Man, that is quite a lot. But that base no longer exists. So, couple more swarm hosts still doing a little bit of damage, vying for all they can. Production has just grinded to a halt. There are no more bases for Breaker that are mineable. There are not enough minerals to be building himself anything. I don't really know what he's doing right now because, actually, RevengE is mined out too. Oh my goodness. How did I even not notice that? So, oh, and he's maxed back on swarm hosts, and the observers are there, but can he get back in time? Can he get back? Oh my goodness, can he get out of there just in time to be able... He's burrowing, but he's going to get targeted down by the Stalkers and the Colossi. The Queens come in to clean this up. The Void Rays are getting fired down by the one Queen, but she is going to go down. The Colossi are dropping like flies. And pretty much there they go. But Breaker has nothing left. And RevengE GG's! My goodness, he had 2 more of those left. There were no more mineable bases, and a Nexus could still be built. The conga line mining was just completely out there. I guess, yeah, both players were distance mining. My goodness, I didn't really see that one coming. The Colossi just died, and RevengE just said, oh, I can't do anything anymore. I mean, that could have easily gone on for another 45 minutes. Wow, what a crazy back-and-forth game. Neither player really varied their strategy a whole lot. RevengE kind of played around a little bit with getting some Archons and Colossi, and, you know, he pretty much stuck with mostly the Colossi and Void Ray for the most part, though. A couple of observers to see what was going on. And Breaker said, I'm just going to stay Swarm Host all day, all the time, and he was able to hold out. So, well played. Good job. Man, that was a long game. Oh, I was actually very surprised at the outcome. I didn't expect it to be that close. I didn't expect it to be that back and forth, to be honest. But that was a good game to cast. Breaker, how'd I do, man? I know you're a veteran of this whole thing. Give me some tips, some suggestions, some feedback. I always appreciate it. I'll load this up on YouTube and send it straight to you. But for now, I've got to go to bed or do something. So this is Pyrotechnics saying GG and good night. Hope you enjoyed. Cheers.